We shall now commence this module by studying about the depository role, need and Depositories Act 1956. We start with the meaning of depository. A depository basically means a place where something is stored or deposited so that it remains secure. But when we talk about depositories in capital market, it is basically a place where securities are kept secured. In simple, we mean compare a depository to a bank. As banks keep accounts of depositories when they deposit money, similarly a depository keeps records for investors' securities like shares, debentures, mutual funds, etc. held by them in a dematerialized or an electronic form. According to subsection 1A of section 12 of the Securities and Exchange Board of India Act 1992, depository means a company formed and registered under the Companies Act 1956 and which has been granted a certificate of registration under subsection 1A of section 12 of the Securities Exchange Board of India Act 1992. The depository system revolves around the concept of paperless trading. The paperless securities or scriptless security are held by the depositors in electronic form or dematerialized for every shareholder. But a shareholder can deal with the depository only through the depository participant. A well-developed depository system in any country is very important for increasing the financial and market efficiency of any economy. This system was introduced in India with the enactment of Depositories Act 1996 in the year 1996. The depository system started in other parts of the world much before it began in our country. In fact, this system was there in Europe before World War II. However, in this chapter, we will discuss about the need and role of this system in our country. We are going to discuss need of depository. Earlier, the clearing and settlement of equity shares was done on accounting period basis. With improvements in technology and growing of business, there was need for the adoption of rolling settlement. This system requires the dematerialization of shares. Dematerialization means the process of converting physical shares into an electronic format. Dematerialization was required to reduce the settlement period and adoption of rolling settlement like trade day plus 3 days or T plus 3 days for settlement of transactions. Only an efficient market can help in achieving this. However, this is not the only reason that a need for having a depository was felt. There are many more reasons for having a depository which we can discuss like this. The very first is that increase in the number of shares being traded. Since 80s and 90s, there has been tremendous growth in the number of shares being traded on the stock exchange. The mushrooming number of shares led to more pressure on clearing and settlement system. A large chunk of papers had to pass from one broker to another broker. Settlement of these trades used to get postponed as brokers were not able to complete the paperwork. Many times settlements were kept closed to finish the backlog of this work. Thus, there was an urgent need of some system so that this paperwork can be reduced and settlements could be done faster. This is one of the reasons that the need for dematerialization and depository was felt. The another reason involved is globalization. With globalization, a large number of foreign institutional investors started investing in India. This required that the ownership of shares must be transferred to these investors as early as possible. The result was that depository in India was set up in the year 1996. The third reason underlying here is the theft of physical share certificates and fake certificates. There has been many cases came to regulatory authorities where the physical share certificates had got stolen, and these stolen certificates then sold in the market. Thus, this poses a great threat to the efficient working of the share market. Also, many investors were afraid of investing their large sum of money in the stock market due to danger of theft. This was another reason for dematerialization of shares. Also, there had been many instances when fake share certificates had been made. This problem is also solved by dematerialization of shares and initiating the process of depository. The fourth reason of initiation of this process is quick functioning of the market. Dematerialization was thought to be good as transaction would have settled faster than before. Thus, to meet the challenges of this fast changing world, the need for setting up of depository was sensed. Now here the question arises that how does the depository function? But before understanding the working of the depository system, we must know about the following players in the depository system. In the depository system, we have first the depository, secondly the depository participant, and the third investor. Depository, as we have discussed above, also is a provider of facility for holding securities. These securities can be shares, debentures or bonds. There are two depositories in India, namely NSDL and CDSL. Depository participants are an agents of the depository. It can be understood as a link which connects the investors in securities with the depositories. A depository participant has to be registered with SEBI to be linked to the depository before acting as its agent. Some of the depository participants in India are ShareCam, Axis Bank Limited, Transworld Security Limited, etc. One can see them as a broker who trades on behalf of investors. An investor can deal with more than one depository participant at a time. Then we have investor. Obviously, investor is the person who buys securities for his or her purpose of investment. He does this by opening an account. So what is this opening an account? An investor who wants to use the services of depository is first of all required to open an account with the depository through a depository participant. The depository participant can be a bank, a broker or any other person having minimum net worth of rupees 1 crore. The investor enters into an agreement with depository participant. After this, he is issued a client ID number. The holder of dematerialized account is also referred to as beneficial owner. Then the second process involved here is dematerialization. Once the account is opened, the investor can convert his physical securities into dematerialized form. For this, he is required to make an application to a depository participant. Within 7 days, the depository participant will transfer the application along with physical shares to the issuer of securities or registrar after registering it with depository through electronic mode. On receipt of such request, depository will again send the request to the issuer or registrar and transfer agent. On receipt of request from the depository, the issuer will verify the validity of such request as it has already received the same request along with physical shares through depository participant. Once the verification is done, then shares are credited electronically in investor's demat account by the depository. Nowadays, all these shares are bought and sold electronically. The third process involves here is rematerialization. In case an investor wants to convert its electronic securities in physical form, then again it has to make an application for that to the depository through depository participant. The application is made in rematerialization request form. On request of such form, the depository participant will also see if such shares exist in client demat account before forwarding such application to depository and issuer and or registrar and transform an agent. Now the depository participant will block the balance in client's account to the extent of rematerialization quantity and electronically forward the request to the depository. Now depository will block the balance of the participant to the extent of the rematerialization quantity. The depository will forward this request to registrar and transfer agent. Once registrar and transfer agent confirm of such request to the depository, then they are required to dispatch the shares within 30 days to the investors. We have discussed the meaning of depository, the objectives behind bringing of the concept, and the Depositories Act 1996. Now, after this, in this module, we will discuss the process that how this depository works, and then we will discuss the need of Depositories Act 1996, and then we will try to understand the meaning of NSDL and CDSL. We have seen that depository helps in dematerialization of shares, that is paperless trading. This is very useful for the growth of the economy, bringing back the confidence of the investors and the initiation and mobilization of more and more savings into the economy and channelization of these savings to the required projects in the economy. So here it is compulsory to discuss the advantages of depository. Till now we have seen that depository is very useful as it holds securities in dematerialized form and helps them in their electronic transfer, which saves a lot of time and money. But there are other benefits also. First, since shares are in electronic form, there will be no fear of their theft or loss. Secondly, no possibility of bad deliveries. Thirdly, no danger of loss of certificate as they are directly credited to the account of the investor. Fourthly, paperless trading saves various costs such as transfer cost, stamping cost, postal charges, etc. Fifthly, due to electronic trading, there has been reduction in brokerage charges also. Sixth benefit associated with this is e-trading facilitates quick transfer of shares or cash. This trading time and money is reduced considerably. Next benefit associated here is that dividends can be transferred to investors' account quickly. The next benefit associated with depository system is that a person can also lock his account for the time he does not want to trade. Now here the question arises, why we need depository in India, or what are the types of depositories working in India? We need depository system in India because at one time the investors' confidence got totally shaken and there was lack of small savings pool to divert towards the required projects in the economy. This confidence has to be restored if the economy has to move progress. This confidence is restored with the growth of depository system in the year 1996 after the initiation of SEBI. We have two depositories in India. These are NSDL and CDSL. The full form of NSDL is National Securities Depository Limited and the full form of CDSL is Central Depository Services Limited. We start with the initiation of National Securities Depository Limited and its need. The first depository to be set up in India is National Securities Depository Limited. The enactment of Depository Act in August 1996 provided the way for establishment of National Securities Depository Limited, that is NSDL. It is an Indian Central Securities Depository. It is based in Mumbai. It was established in the year 1995. It has established national infrastructure using international standards that handles most of the securities held and settled in dematerialized form in the Indian market. It aims to provide a safe and secure marketplace for trading of securities. NSDL helps in transfer of securities electronically. There are more than 1 crore Demat account opened with NSDL. NSDL offers wide variety of facilities. Some of these facilities are dematerialization, that is converting physical certificates to electronic form. Rematerialization, that is conversion of securities in Demat form into physical certificates. Facilitating repurchase or redemption of units of mutual funds. Electronic settlement of trades in stock exchanges connected to NSDL. Next, advantage associated with NSDL is that pledging or hypothecation of dematerialized securities against loan. Further, electronic credit of securities allotted in public issues or right issues. Further, the receipt of non-cash corporate benefits such as bonus in electronic form. The next, freezing of Demat account so that the debits from the account are not permitted. The next is nomination facility for Demat account. The next is services related to change of address. The next is effecting transmission of securities. The next is instruction to depository participants over internet through Speed e-facility. The next facility offered by NSDL is account monitoring facility over internet for clearing members through Speed facility. Other facility like holding debt instruments in the same account or availing stock lending or borrowing facility, etc. are offered by NSDL. Then we have the second agency operating for this depository system, known as Central Depository Services Limited, or shortly we can call it as CDSL. It is the second Indian Central Securities Depository based in Mumbai. It was founded in the year 1999. It received the certificate of commencement of business from SEBI in the mentioned year. CDSL was promoted by Bombay Stock Exchange Limited jointly with leading banks such as State Bank of India, Bank of India, Bank of Baroda, HDFC Bank, Standard Chartered Bank and Union Bank of India. CDSL was set up with the objective of providing convenient, dependable and secure depository services at affordable cost to all market participants. The depository participant that has been registered with CDSL for internet access can provide investors an internet access to their respective Demat accounts. CDSL has more than 10,000 depository participants registered with it. Now we move on to the discussion of Depositories Act 1996. The Depositories Act initially came into force as an ordinance, namely the Depositories Ordinance 1995, that was made known on 7th January 1996. The Depositories Act was formed so that a legal framework can be established for establishing a depository that can help in electronic transfer of securities ownership by maintaining an account of each investor. The Act also made consequential amendments in the Companies Act of our country, or the Securities and Exchange Board of India 1992, or the Indian Stamp Act and Income Tax Act and the Benami Transactions, that is Prohibition Act 1988. The Depositories Act 1996 was enacted with the purpose of ensuring electronic transferability of shares with speed, precision and securities by making securities of public companies freely transferable subject to certain exceptions by restricting companies' right to use discretion in effecting the transferred securities and dispensing with the transfer deed and other procedural requirements under the Companies Act. The Depositories Act 1996 is an act to provide for regulation of depositories in our country. This act takes care of any matter related to depositories. Now let us have a look at some of the important provisions of this act. The first and important provision involved here is that no depository shall act as a depository unless it obtains a certificate of commencement of business from SEBI. Any depository before operating shall be registered with Securities and Exchange Board of India. After being registered, they must obtain a certificate of commencement of business from SEBI. But before granting such certificate of commencement, SEBI shall satisfy itself for the following conditions as given in the Act. The depository has made adequate arrangements including insurance for indemnifying any kind of losses. Beneficial owners for any loss that may be caused to such beneficial owner by the wrongful act, negligence or default of the depository or its participants or of any employee of the depository or participant, and the grant of certificate of commencement of business is in the interest of investors in the securities market. And the next, the board shall, before granting a certificate of commencement of business, make a physical verification of the infrastructure, facilities and system established by the depository. Second precaution kept by the SEBI is there should be an agreement between depository and depository participant. Any person through depository participant can enter into agreement with depository as per bylaws of this act. The third precaution kept by SEBI is that every person subscribing to securities offered by an issuer shall have the option either to receive the security certificate or hold securities with a depository. The next precaution is that all securities held by a depository shall be dematerialized and shall be in a fungible form. The next precaution is, notwithstanding anything contained in any other law for the time being in force, a depository shall be deemed to be the registered owner for the purpose of effecting transfer of ownership of security on behalf of a beneficial owner. The sixth is that every depository shall maintain a register and an index of beneficial owners. The seventh is that every beneficial owner shall have intimation of pledge or hypothecation of securities to the depository, and such depository shall bear coupon to make entries in its records accordingly. The next advantage or the precaution kept by SEBI is that every depository shall furnish to the issuer information about the transfer of securities in the name of beneficial owners at such intervals and in such manner as may be specified by the bylaws. The ninth, if a beneficial owner seeks to opt out of a depository in respect of any security, he shall inform the depository accordingly. The depository shall, on receipt of intimation, make appropriate entries in its record and shall inform the issuer. The 10th, any loss caused to the beneficial owner due to the negligence of the depository or the participant, the depository shall indemnify such beneficial owner, where the loss due to the negligence of the participant in indemnifying by the depository, and the depository shall have the right to recover the same from such participant. The next precaution kept by SEBI is that the board has all the powers to call upon any issuer, depository participant or beneficial owner to furnish in writing such information relating to the securities held in a depository as it may require. The board has also power, if anybody contravenes the provision of this act, then he can be punishable with fine or imprisonment. The board has all the power that if any person aggrieved by an order of the board made under this act or the regulations made thereunder may prefer an appeal to the central government within such time as may be prescribed, the board such allow. Further, a depository shall, with the previous approval of the board, make bylaws consistent with the provisions of this act and the regulations. Then, transfer of registered ownership of shares from a person to a depository or from a depository to a beneficial owner shall not be liable to any stamp duty. The next, the Company Law Board may, on an application made by a depository, company, participating company or participant or investor or the Securities and Exchange Board of India within 2 months from the date of transfer of any shares or debentures held by a depository or from the date on which the instrument of transfer or the intimation of transmission was delivered to the company, as the case may be, after such inquiry as it thinks fit, direct any company or depository to rectify, register or records if the transfer of shares or debentures is in contravention of any of the provisions of Securities and Exchange Board of India Act 1992 or regulations made thereunder or the Sikh Industrial Companies Special Provision Act 1985. There were various amendments in Income Tax Act, Benami Act and SEBI Act with the introduction of this act. Now we are going to make a summary of what we have discussed so far. We have started discussing the meaning of depository. Depository is an important link in scriptless trading. It is beneficial for the growth of more liquid market. Developed market increases competition and is essential for attracting many investors. It helps in considerable reduction in delay while trading. It has proved to be very convenient for investors. Depository system works through depository participant. India has 2 depositories set up as per the Depositories Act 1996. However, there are many other acts that also guide the Depositories Act 1996. We have 2 depositories, namely NSDL and CDSL. This is also evident with the increasing number of depository participants and demat account year by year that the Depositories Act 1996 is very helpful to the investors, and NSDL and CDSL are doing excellent job in redressing the grievances of the investors. Establishment of depository has proved to be a major reform in the Indian stock market.